Urgent, Trump leaked crucial coordinates in Moscow to Zelenskyy. This is what the leaders secretly agreed upon behind closed doors. The intermediate pact has been put into action. Putin has been brought down. There is no way back. At this very moment, thousands of long-range missiles are encircling Putin's bunker. Britain and the EU have pressed the launch button, bypassing the US. The conveyors of death have been officially launched. A Russian general is in shock. This is the end. Shock. Lukashenko is on his knees. Zelenskyy pulled out a deadly ace and started the countdown for Minsk. The Special Operations Forces are already preparing to break in. The fiery purge will happen. All this and more in our upcoming report, Hotspot. Sensation? Trump has officially taken Kyiv's side and put an end to Putin. This fateful statement by Donald destroyed the Kremlin's plans. Zelenskyy and Trump shook hands, a real gift for the Special Operations Forces from the White House. The most important coordinates in Moscow have been leaked. Watch for all the details.
Putin still considers his best friend to be, as before Kyiv, the Pentagon's new strong ally. The US president is so impressed by the Ukrainian armed forces' deep strikes on Russian territory that he is ready to put additional pressure on Russia to bring Putin to the negotiating table.
Something has to happen. They are losing a lot of people, a lot of soldiers. Both sides are losing a lot, but Russia is losing more.
And most importantly, what Putin has lost is the support of Trump himself.
In what way exactly should we understand this more from our perspective?
Moreover, the American president allegedly stabbed the Russian dictator in the back by urging Zelenskyy to act more boldly toward Russia in order to force the Kremlin into a truce.
Logic simply doesn't work. Power is what works. And Russia is running out of power.
Running out is putting it very mildly. In reality, Russia simply no longer has the resources to maintain the front. There's no fuel, no food, and no new contract soldiers for the endless local assaults. Recruiters all over Russia can't find them no matter how hard they look. Even Putin, deep in his bunker, is starting to realize this.
Of course, under such circumstances. With such massive pressure when the entire West is working against them, and these drones are coming in a huge stream, it effectively generates a profound sense of strategic uncertainty regarding the maneuvers and operations of the Russian armed forces.
There is only one way out for the Kremlin. Analysts explain there is only one option. If the man in the bunker wants to keep things moving, the country will have to declare a general mobilization. But on the eve of elections in Russia, no one will dare to do this.
There will be a harsh response, and it will be devastating for Russia. And of course, the Russian military are well aware of this too. No one will go for it.
Putin was counting until the very end that he would once again get some help. That Trump would forbid the Ukrainian armed forces from striking Russian oil refineries. But here's the problem. This time, the American president also took Kyiv's side, not the Kremlin's. On the contrary, he even praised the Ukrainian armed forces' deep strikes. And according to the Financial Times, before the attack on the Moscow oil refinery, US intelligence shared important information with their Ukrainian counterparts.
I think that if Trump had demanded some reduction in strikes, then I think Ukraine, they would have had to do something. But in this situation, I am very glad to admit that it looks as if Trump supports Ukraine's strikes on Russia. Indeed, he wants to be a winner, and I think he will really help Ukraine after victory. That's why it's very important that you win, and then at your wedding, a limousine will pull up with Donald Trump, who will say that all of it was thanks to his services, his achievements. Then we'll all say, well, okay, Donald, fine, you're the greatest, pour the man a drink and let him go.
And the role of the winner in a limousine really appeals to Donald Trump. To give him credit, he always looks for an advantage in everything and everywhere. And lately for the White House, a Ukrainian victory seems much more realistic than Moscow taking Kyiv in 3 days. Or in more than 3 years of full-scale war.
Trump won't save them because Trump wants money. And if they can't give him money, well, then apparently they'll just have to wait and put pressure on them. In this sense, Zelenskyy is now trying to help, from Trump's point of view, to make Putin come to his senses. Because if Putin doesn't understand, well, then let's hit them harder so they get the message, because he just wants to make money.
And you clearly can't make money with the Kremlin, so you need to make sure there's nothing left of it. And Trump, together with his allies, including Ukraine, was making money instead of the Kremlin.
Trump adapts very quickly, He's a chameleon, a survivor. And in this sense, he is unlike Putin, who behaves in a consistent manner, dragging the whole country through the meat grinder.
Slowly, but it does eventually get through to Putin. So once he smelled trouble, he suddenly started talking about a ceasefire.
The Russian Federation, nevertheless, as has been stated more than once, remains fully prepared to engage in constructive diplomatic peace negotiations with Ukraine.
But now no one is in a hurry to make deals with the Kremlin anymore. Especially not on the terms of the Russian dictator. A little more time, analysts say, and the conversation will not be about a peace agreement, but about Moscow's capitulation.
In short, if over the next 2 months the situation continues to develop in Ukraine's favor as it is now, then yes, Putinism will face major changes.
All Ukraine can do is hope for this and do everything possible to ensure that the coming changes at the front and in Russia's rear are for the worse for the Kremlin.
At this very moment, thousands of long-range missiles are entering Ukraine. Putin's bunker is in a fiery ring of death. Putin's generals are in a stupor. Europe's autonomous missile monster will forever wipe out Russian military bases. Britain and the EU have activated the conveyors of death. Washington will no longer be able to block this decision. See the details.
The longer Putin drags out the war, the more weapons Ukraine receives.
Putin is becoming weak. He is weakening politically on the battlefield and physically.
And against this backdrop, Western countries are taking the next step. The United Kingdom is testing long-range missiles for Ukraine, systems being developed under the Break Stop program.
The UK Ministry of Defence has successfully conducted the first tests of new long-range missile systems being developed to strengthen Ukraine's defense capabilities.
These are systems with a warhead of about 250 kilograms and a strike range of up to 500 kilometers. Such missiles are capable of hitting targets not only on the front line but also deep behind enemy lines. Warehouses, headquarters, and key logistical hubs that supply the Russian army could come under attack.
The British Defence Department tasked developers with creating a strike weapon capable of reaching speeds over 300 kilometers per hour. That's 70 miles per hour, about 600 kilometers per hour, with a relatively low production cost of around £400,000 per unit. The main requirement of the project is the ability to produce at least 20 such systems per month. And
most importantly, the new weapon must be deployed in Ukraine without American components and without reliance on American data. In fact, this is about creating an autonomous European long-range strike system. At the same time, the United Kingdom is ramping up its current military assistance. The new £752 million package includes drones, missiles, and air defense systems.
The international partners and allies have already fully realized that Ukraine possesses a formidable level of strength and resilience. Moreover, it made such a profound and lasting impression on them that even Trump realized he had previously and incorrectly characterized Ukraine as the losing side in this conflict.
At the same time as the British initiatives, another broader trend is taking shape. Ukraine is gradually becoming not only a recipient of weapons but also a producer of them.
It is truly encouraging to witness the unwavering determination of various nations across the European continent. Finally, after much deliberation, concrete and decisive measures are being taken to significantly strengthen their collective security.
The group of 7 countries and the United States have agreed on a licensing mechanism that will allow the production of Western weapons to be launched in Ukraine. And this is no longer just about defense. Ukraine will be able to produce not only air defense systems but also long-range strike weapons, including missiles. In
the first place, we are counting on our own capabilities, on our own defense industry. We hope that we will produce our own anti-ballistic systems and our own ballistic missiles. We will do this, and when it comes to drones, we will only continue to expand our production capabilities and so on. This is key.
In addition, the Netherlands has announced its readiness to finance the delivery of about 700 cruise missiles. Ruta and Germany and Ukraine have signed a contract for the supply of 600 anti-aircraft missiles for air defense systems.
The Europeans do not want to fight the Russian Federation with their own hands. Therefore, the stronger. The more they beat the Russian Federation with Ukraine's hands, the better it is for them.
Today, Ukraine is gradually changing its role. It is no longer just a country that receives weapons, it is becoming a country where these weapons are produced, and external support is shifting from one-time deliveries to the ongoing production of weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine.
The shock of a fiery cleansing of Belarus. So be it. Zelenskyy pulled an unexpected ace out of his sleeve. Only a few days remain. Shahids will no longer fly from Belarus. The command in Minsk is in total panic. A complete geopolitical collapse of the Belarusian regime. Zelensky set strict boundaries for Lukashenko. Details to follow. The countdown has begun. But Minsk has less than a week left to remove Russian equipment from Belarusian territory, which, according to Kyiv, is used to control drones launched against Ukraine.
Since this has been communicated more than once, we have moved to the stage of a public signal. This means that if he doesn't remove it, we will.
We are talking about 4 relay stations which, according to Ukrainian intelligence, are located in the Gomel and Brest regions.
When I do something publicly, that is, let's say, my strategy. Before that, I take certain de-escalating steps, not publicly. At the intelligence and military level, Belarus at the leadership level has received the information. Stop helping the Russians. The story with the relay stations is not something that happened just yesterday. This is a long process. There have been casualties exclusively on the Ukrainian side because of it.
Their task is to assist Russian and Iranian drones, specifically to locate targets in the Ukrainian rear, including in the Zhytomyr, Rivne and Volyn regions.
Zelensky is at the very least making it clear to Lukashenko that conciliatory words from the dictator are not enough, because Zelensky and all Ukrainians have already heard plenty of words over these 4+ years. And now only actions matter to them. If Lukashenko wants to make peace, then here are the steps to take, but if he doesn't, then we can recall his own words about Belarus's vulnerability to Ukrainian drones, for whom the country is like an open palm. If I were in his place, Lukashenko did not dare to test Zelensky's threats for their strength. Belarus cannot defend itself against the Ukrainian army. And
while the mustachioed one is thinking, another important signal is flying from Ukraine to Minsk. According to the Telegram channel Nikolaevsky Vanek, this equipment has already been targeted by Ukraine.
This equipment has already been quietly dismantled once. Now it needs to be dismantled loudly by their own hands.
But the issue with the relay stations is about exerting broader pressure on Minsk. Ukraine is demanding that Belarus stop supplying fuel to the Russian army.
We are also telling them, sending a signal. Please stop supplying fuel to the Russian army. But these are just signals. There are no threats here. We are saying that we see this. And
even though Belarus is trying to formally distance itself from the war, in reality, Minsk remains within the orbit of Russian military influence.
It has been, as you said, 4 days since this ultimatum was announced. Officially, as we are speaking now, there has been no official response from Belarus. Peskov has commented today there were tirades from Lavrov. They are the ones speaking out on this topic, because apparently they believe this is their issue, a matter within their competence. Moreover, they are even speaking as if on behalf of the Belarusian authorities. But Lukashenko has not found an opportunity to address the nation or make any kind of statement. And this is happening at a time when there is talk about the possibility of the war spreading onto the territory of Belarus.
But despite the loud statements about peace and apologies to Zelensky,
if Vladimir Alexandrovich was offended, I apologize to him.
And regular assurances that Belarus is not going to fight against Ukraine in practice over more than 4 years, Minsk has still not managed to break free from Russian influence. While Lukashenko talks about the inadmissibility of escalation, Belarusian territory continues to be used in the interests of the Kremlin.
If you look at Lukashenko's statements, when he talks about regarding the involvement of Belarus in the war, Belarus's participation in the war, he very often falls back on the same point. And the same argument, he tries to describe it from Russia's point of view, namely that Russia doesn't need this, that Putin doesn't need this. They are not raising this issue. And then he goes on with his reasoning. The front becomes longer and so on. So from this, a very simple picture emerges. The fact that today Belarus is involved by Russia in this war in the way that it is involved, it's not because there is a brave and valiant Lukashenko who is supposedly fending off Russian attacks, but simply because Russia does not consider it necessary to involve Belarus in any other way. But now it seems to me we are dealing with a similar situation where in Moscow they have to decide and are probably deciding and will decide for themselves what to do in this situation, whether to allow this escalation.
That's why many experts are convinced that these statements are addressed not so much to Ukraine, but to other players.
It is absolutely unacceptable for the war between Ukraine and Russia to spill over onto the territory of Belarus for various reasons. 2 reasons. I have mentioned them. The first one, we understand this, which is why we do not want to fight. Belarus is extremely vulnerable strategically and militarily. If Ukraine begins launching offensive strikes against Belarus in the exact same manner it currently attacks Russia, because for the Ukrainian military, Belarus is like an open book. We understand perfectly well that our main life support, production, and logistics facilities would come under attack. Well, as they have stated, they already have 500 such targets. These have been identified on the territory of Belarus. That's the first reason. The second reason is that our people are not suited for war.
First and foremost, Belarus entering the war is not in China's interest, as China remains one of Minsk's key external partners.
China, as one of the beneficiaries of the Lukashenko regime, has as of today de facto set rather strict conditions for Lukashenko to receive further credit. And these conditions are that it is necessary to completely stop brandishing the nuclear stick, to stop talking about Oreshnik and other things. It must be made clear to Vladimir Putin that there will be no aggression from Belarus. Nor even theoretically, under a foreign flag or their flag, is this being considered.
Circumstances are pushing the Belarusian dictator to remove his backside from one of the chairs he has been trying to sit on until now. The time for contradictory statements is coming to an end. Kyiv is demanding not peaceful words from Lukashenko, but peaceful actions.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. The end of the gas station country, the thieves have completely run out of gasoline, and a fuel shortage has paralyzed the cities. A complete collapse and knockout of the Russian economy. An ultra-powerful fuel crisis has strangled dozens of regions in just a few days. Gas stations have empty tanks and public transport is panicking and going off its routes. The Kremlin is trying to hide the irreparable from its population, but the situation is already out of control. Details in the report.
The fuel crisis is spreading across Russia, and it will get even worse. A fiery greeting. The Ukrainian defense forces have targeted oil refineries. In the village of Poltavskaya, in the Krasnodar region, as well as 2 out of 3 oil refineries in Ufa.
I filmed it. Unbelievable, Laris. The second one. This is crazy. Look at what's happening. And where was the first one? Over there. Yesterday, you see, they keep trying to put it out, but...
To be honest, it is all feeling a bit weak now.
Problems with fuel have already affected at least 78 regions of Russia, according to calculations by journalists from the publication Verstka. The situation is worst in the annexed Crimea, where gas stations have been completely banned from selling gasoline to private individuals. On the peninsula, black market trading of the scarce fuel is thriving, conducted through closed telegram channels. Payment is required in full in advance. Delivery is by courier, but even this channel has now dried up.
The fuel at the depot is running out. The next tanker truck will arrive on Friday or Saturday, but that's the best case scenario. For now, we're selling off whatever is left. The new shipment will arrive in a few days, but we can no longer guarantee the old price.
Journalists from Verstka calculated that only in 29 regions of Russia have the authorities acknowledged the problem and imposed official restrictions on fuel sales. Russians themselves are telling how things really are at gas stations across the country. The multi-kilometer-long lines have even reached the very heart of the places where that very oil is pumped, the country's gas stations. Here's an epic video from the town of Ishimbai, set to a cheerful radio song about abundance and happiness. But on the phone screen, it's real life.
Holy moly, I'll stop. Filming. I'll stop filming. Unbelievable, guys. We still reside within the bustling city of dedicated oil workers. It is absolutely unbelievable. It is nearly an entire kilometer in length. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. There are some people who are already quite lucky.
Meanwhile, as expected, prices at Russian gas stations have started to creep up.
Someone once said that triple-digit numbers wouldn't fit on the display. Everything fits just fine for them. I honestly think that very soon, even those large 4-digit numbers will easily fit right in here on that display. I'll just show you now. Here in Shakti, everything fits perfectly too. 108.95 gasoline. Don't want to stand in line? Come here, everyone, come here. There are no cars here. Not a single person. I thought, oh great, there are lines at every gas station. And do you know how much a liter of gasoline costs here? 126 rubles for some cheap one and 136 for the other, if I'm not mistaken. I'm in shock. People, what is this? What's going on? This is a nightmare.
In the 5th year of the total destruction of Ukrainian cities, the Russians who started the war stood in line for a few days and started whining about their miserable fate.
Why is everything falling apart? Why is this happening in life? What the Just how long is this expected to last? How much longer will we be tormented? When will this all end?
The consequences of the fuel crisis, even if just a little, are already affecting the operation of public transport. Journalists from the agency counted cancelled routes in at least 4 regions of Russia.
The administration of the Borzinsky district in the Zabaikalsky Krai announced a reduction in the operating schedule of civilian routes. In a press release, this decision was attributed to a limited supply of diesel fuel. The restrictions came into effect today. A day earlier, a city bus in Chita was unable to refuel, according to the publication Chita.ru. Because of this, the first run on route number 40 in the Ulyanovsky district of the Kaluga region was cancelled. All suburban routes were cancelled, local authorities reported on Tuesday. They did not specify when service would be restored, explaining the cancellations by a shortage of diesel fuel.
According to media reports, the fuel shortage has also spread to the passenger air transportation sector.
Azimut Airlines, one of the leaders in the domestic flight market, has appealed to the Ministry of Energy. The company has declared a critical situation with kerosene and is urgently asking the government to intervene. In its appeal to the authorities, Azimut's management notes that fuel prices in Russia have soared by more than 17% in recent weeks, while supplies have dropped by a third. Operating under these conditions no longer makes economic sense, and the company is being forced to cancel and reschedule flights. Another major carrier, Irairo, has already joined Azimut in this situation. They have already warned about the inevitable increase in ticket prices. At the same time, a number of airports across the country have introduced restrictions on aircraft refueling.
Russian officials are putting on a poker face and are essentially ignoring the problem.
I don't know what Azimut has announced. We ourselves don't see anywhere that airlines are changing their schedules or refusing to transport passengers. For now, everyone is operating according to schedule. Everything is flying. There are some logistical difficulties, but they are being resolved.
At gas stations owned by our systemically important companies, the so-called vertically integrated companies, prices there, if they have increased at all, have only risen slightly.
Putin has already turned to Belarus and Kazakhstan for help, but according to experts, these 2 countries are unlikely to save Russia from a fuel collapse. Moreover, the Tokayev administration has requested aviation kerosene from Moscow, but even Russians themselves are running short of it.
There are 2 countries. They are, as they say, perfectly suited for this. For many years, Russia, even starting from pre-war times, especially in the first years after the war began, supplied India with a large amount of sanctioned crude oil. The Indians have been quite successful in making from this oil various refined petroleum products and distributed these goods to markets all across Southeast Asia. The situation has not changed. So I think that the Indians will export to those countries that offer them the best terms, and their oil refining capacity is enormous. China has equally enormous oil refining capabilities. These 2 countries could quite easily, so to speak, fill the gap in Russia's fuel market that was created by the Ukrainian armed forces. Well, also since the government thinks in yesterday's terms, they kept referring to the fact that Russia has reserve capacities. These really did always exist at about 20% of the total refining volume, but they have long since disappeared. These capacities no longer exist. They are all being used. That is, the refineries are either undergoing major repairs, have been damaged by drones, or are operating at the limits of their capabilities. And since the logistics network in Russia has remained outdated all these years, there is a shortage of oil tank cars. The railway is operating at the limit of its capacity. Pipelines both above ground and underground have been largely destroyed, and there is no replacement for them. This makes it practically impossible to transfer large volumes of petroleum products, for example, from the Far East to the central region of Russia.
Now let someone say that Russia is just a gas station.
It is still unclear how India and China will respond, as Russians have been supplying them with sanctioned oil for years and at incredibly attractive prices. Experts say that everything happening in Russia so far is just the tip of the iceberg. At the same time, the Kremlin does have a real chance to contain this crisis. Only one thing can stand in Moscow's way: daily systematic and precise attacks by Ukraine's unmanned systems forces.
Right now, a Kremlin revolt stirs among security services. FSB leaders are demanding Putin cancel Duma elections. The regime is collapsing. Panic has broken out in the Kremlin offices. United Russia is going under. But is Putin ready to admit his defeat? Watch.
The Kremlin, where everything used to go according to plan, suddenly became nervous. The September State Duma elections, which were supposed to be a triumph of stability, have turned into a headache.
Putin called the parliamentary elections the country's most important domestic political event, the election of deputies to the State Duma. Let us remind you, the elections for the 9th convocation will be held from September 18th to 20th.
Rumors have started circulating that the leadership of the FSB and the head of the National Guard, Viktor Zolotov, are increasingly urging the Russian dictator to call the whole thing off, just to be safe.
The possible introduction of martial law and accordingly the cancellation of the elections. That's why I don't consider such a scenario to be unlikely. I believe there really are people who are persuading Putin that it's better to follow this scenario, including because United Russia's ratings are falling. Just yesterday, we received word that in the specific regions where United Russia's approval ratings are currently at their lowest levels, they will be implementing a system of remote electronic voting.
The logic is absolutely simple. No elections, no problems. But what exactly has shaken the self-confidence of the Russian authorities? The list of reasons is impressive. A hole in the budget, constant price increases, or closed polls that show United Russia results that are far from what the party would like to see.
Of course, this situation is quite dangerous if people believe that the elections are rigged. Then the State Duma loses this informal legitimacy. In other words, people stop trusting it. Although everyone perfectly understands that the Duma doesn't decide anything. It merely rubber stamps decisions that have already been made in the presidential administration.
But officially, of course, everything is under control. The Kremlin denies such rumors, and Putin even publicly supports holding the elections.
We understand that the elections will take place under difficult circumstances. Our opponents, let's call them that, or rather our adversaries, primarily external ones, will try to use any opportunity to sow division and destabilize Russian society.
For Putin, announcing the cancellation of elections is not just a statement. It is a real blow to the dictator's pride and his image.
First of all, Putin is a legalist, yes, and he wants to formally follow the procedures that are enshrined in the constitution. After all, look at how he constantly tries to attack Volodymyr Zelenskyy, saying that he is illegitimate because his term has ended. Of course, he is afraid that if he cancels the elections, people will say to him, "Why are you criticizing Zelenskyy at all? You're no better yourself."
But the point is actually something else. If, sooner or later, it is announced that there will be no elections, this will become a signal to everyone that the system can no longer guarantee even the imitation of control.
Here, the real question is, which provokes a sharper reaction? Dishonest elections or their cancellation? But the problem lies elsewhere. If the elections are cancelled, most likely it will all come as a package. Simultaneously, martial law will be introduced. The remaining mass media will be banned, although there's hardly anything left as it is. Total censorship will be imposed, and everyone will be mobilized for the war as much as possible.
And here they are, the results of 26 years of rule. United Russia's ratings have hit rock bottom. Even according to optimistic forecasts, fewer and fewer people are willing to vote for them. And these aren't isolated cases anymore. It's become mainstream.
I wouldn't vote for United Russia. What don't you like about them? We need to change something so that we can live better. United Russia has already... You understand yourself. Would you support the party led by United Russia?
More likely no than yes.
Why?
Well, I don't really like what's going on.
Tell me, did you used to be a supporter of United Russia?
Yes.
Tell me, will you support the political party led by United Russia?
No.
Tell me, are you planning to support the ruling political party known as United Russia?
No. And this is where things start to get truly absurd. If the authorities still take the risk and fabricate a victory for themselves, won't this backfire on them?
There remains one question, and it's the most important one. First of all, is the elite ready to keep tolerating Putin, or have internal elite processes also already matured? Because if protest sentiments have truly matured within the elites, then a joint action by people who are dissatisfied with the results, along with some non-elite factors, could actually lead the situation not just to a state of mild unrest, but all the way to a revolutionary situation.
In the end, this is the classic dictator's trap. The authorities have cornered themselves. Holding elections is frightening because no one believes in their fabricated triumph anymore, but to cancel them would mean admitting that stability is over. The system, which for years had been clearing the field, is now left face to face with its own fear.